Easy, homemade, simple bread recipe for beginners. Step-by-step recipe with no milk at all. If you want to learn how to make soft, fluffy, tasty and delicious bread without milk, then this is the video for you. So firstly, I'm starting off with 5 cups of all-purpose flour. Next, I'm gonna add 1 teaspoon of salt. I'm adding 1/4 cup of brown sugar, and I'm also adding 1 pack of instant yeast. And I'm going to give all of those dry ingredients a nice mix before I add the wet ingredients to my dry ingredients. Once I know my dry ingredients are combined really well, I then prepare my wet ingredients to go in. And I'm adding some melted butter. I added 3/4 cup of melted butter. You can feel free to use margarine if you do not have butter on hand. And I'm going to give that a nice mix and incorporate all of those ingredients together well before I start adding the water into the mixture. I add 3/4 cup of water first and knead as I'm going along, because I'm feeling out the texture of the bread as we are going along, so that I don't add too much water and I don't add too little amount of water. So as we add the water gradually, what will happen is that we can get a feel of how dry or how wet/moist our dough is becoming. And this is going to help us maintain a very smooth consistency or soft consistency throughout the bread making process. So I just added 1 cup of water so far, and majority of the dough has already come together. So I just want to make sure that there are no sticky spaces involved, and if they are, I just incorporate it well into what we already have. And you just want to continuously knead this until your entire dough has combined. So in total, I would have used 1¼ cup of water to bring this dough to the consistency that you are seeing it at currently, which is still a bit sticky, so I will be adding some water as we go along to facilitate it not being too soft of a dough. So I'm just gonna knead going around, and I'm going to add very light amounts of flour as we are kneading through the process here. And I'm going to knead until my entire dough comes together really well. As you could see, majority of the dough is picked up together and is in one bowl. Also, not forgetting to mention that you want to incorporate every single piece of flour or grain or dust of flour that is on your bowl into this dough ball, as to ensure you get the maximum amount of benefits throughout your ingredients. And I usually knead my flour for about 8 minutes, and that helps bring the elasticity together for the raising process. Then I just simply allow this to rest with a damp cloth over it for 45 minutes. Next, I'm going to take my margarine that I would have used within my bread itself, and I'm just going to butter the dish that I am going to place my bread in. Actually, greasing your bread pans will ensure that your bread does not stick to the bread pans, because you don't want to do all of that work, all of that beautiful work that you would have put in to making wonderfully soft bread, and then it sticks to the pan and it can't come out. So buttering the pan will allow you to gain access to that bread very easily without it sticking or causing any type of issues to your finished product at the end. So this recipe usually gives me 4 beautiful loaves of bread. So you can get 4 loaves of bread from the 5 cups of flour that we would have started with in the beginning. So once we have finished buttering our bread pans, it's time to dust the surface with some flour to place that dough onto the surface. And this is what our dough looks like after 45 minutes of raising. It did more than double in size, I would say. Also, not to mention, the reason that we dust our surface with flour is to ensure that the dough does not stick to the surface. Depending on where you are, if the surface is cold, the dough tends to stick to it, and it can cause a lot of issues with getting it to combine together really well. You are going to then cut this dough into 4 equal pieces, as equal as you can get them. If you have a scale, you can measure it out for a more accurate measurement. However, I usually just tend to eyeball this measurement, and it works out really well for me. So I would cut my dough into 4 parts, and this is going to be what we are going to use to make our loaves of bread. And I'm just using the pinching method, almost like we are making a lawyer, to just combine it before we roll it into that bread shape that we are looking for at the end. Pay attention to each dough ball individually so that we can place them into our bread pans. And I'm taking the first one that I would have made into a bowl, and I'm pressing it like if I am going to spread open a pizza or dough for a pizza. And you can do this method using your hands until they are spread big enough for you, or you can simply use a rolling pin like I am using right now to evenly open out your dough, and then we are going to roll it into our bread shape as we go along. This also helps remove any air bubbles or any air pockets that your bread may have had, which allows for no spaces to appear or any empty air pockets during your bread making process. So we're just gonna continue to repeat those same steps on the remainder 3 of our dough, and place them into our bread pans once we are completed with ensuring we get the shape that we desire. Don't forget to clean down your surfaces once you are finished and completed with the flour process. This is what our bread looks like in the pan, and we are going to cover each bread pan with a damp cloth and allow it to raise for 45 minutes, 30 to 45 minutes. This is dependent on where you live. The time may vary. I would suggest keeping it in a warm area that is going to allow your dough to double or even triple in size. Today by me was relatively warm, so my bread did get to double in size really nicely. And here is a bit of a time lapse of that process of my bread raising while they are in pans. And this is what my bread looks like after 45 minutes. Now, the thing about it is I don't allow my bread to come all the way over the pan, because when it does go into the oven, it also raises in size as well. So this is the size that I allow them to get before putting them into the oven. And when you are baking them, I did bake this set on 375 degrees for 35 minutes. And my oven was preheated to that temperature already. Another secret is if you are in a cold area and your oven does preheat, you can preheat your oven to 180 degrees and allow it to raise for half an hour. But this is what my bread looks like after 35 minutes. This is what my bread looks like after 35 minutes. They have gotten that wonderful golden brown color. Look at how amazing that looks there. And I'm just gonna take the others out of the oven for you to see before we place them on a cooling rack. Now it's time to take them out individually out of our cooling rack, and look at that gorgeous beauty. So you see the importance of why we buttered our pans. Look at how easily that just rolled out of the bread pans. So simple, so easy, and nothing was being stuck to those bread pans, so it did not really move the shape of our bread or damage our bread in any form or fashion. So once we have gotten all our bread out of the pans, this is what they're looking like. You can feel free to stop at this point here, but I love a beautiful glaze on my bread. It just finishes off the touches on the bread so wonderfully. So I am going to take some of that margarine that I did have remain back in my packaging, and I'm just going to lightly butter the top of our bread, and this is going to give our bread a beautiful golden brown glaze at the top. You're going to do this on top of all 4 loaves of bread. And you could see that beautiful, wonderful, tasty, mouth-watering glaze that margarine just gave the top of our bread. It just adds a really nice finishing touch to our bread. And again, you could feel free to stop at this point. However, if your bread did get a bit hard on the top and you don't like that sort of hard crust, what you can do is apply a damp cloth on the top of your bread for about 1 to 2 minutes, and that is just going to soften up our bread so much. So that is what I did here, and I just placed it for 1 to 2 minutes, and look at that. Oh my goodness, that is some mouth-watering bread that we have there. And now it's time to give that bread a nice cut to see how the texture inside our bread is. And as you can see, we did get some beautiful, soft, moist, no pocket bread. You could simply just eat this with butter, hot off the press with butter, with cheese, or you can pair it with any of your favorite breakfast or dinner options. Today we chose to pair our homemade bread with some sausage. I hope you all enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one. Bye.